Hey everyone, before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you like my content, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and then join the Militiaman and Crew Patreon community by clicking the link in the caption. Hey, good evening everybody, Militiaman and Crew here again, and just wanted to give you guys a quick update for this evening. Look, Al-Nusiri identifies treatments for the fluctuations in the dinar exchange rate and expectations of its return to the equilibrium price in the parallel market. This is the basis of the article, but it's got a little different twist to it, I believe. So let's just see if we can dig into it. But by the way, everybody, thank you for being with Militiaman and Crew. And we all really appreciate all the support that you guys bring to us by coming here and enjoying Patreon at patreon.com with MM and Crew. It's great. Our Discord chat room, everybody in there, kudos to you. Kudos to all the people that are working for us that help keep everybody, apprised of the content that we bring. And it's so very important because, as you guys all know, it's a team effort. It's a lot of work, but we still bring it because we're passionate about it. We believe in what we own, and I think we all know that what we own is coming to fruition. Which is Iraq going into an international market, going into the private sector, merging banks. They're going to be merging state banks, one of the last final stages of going into a market economy. And we have so much data in our room that you guys can come in and see that, do some searching, and find that you're going to have some hope. And that's what I try to bring. I've been doing this for a few years, and people that know me understand that I try to be consistent with the news. I read the news to you guys the best I can. Not very good, but I do the best that I can. So anyway, check this one out. The advisor to the Private Banks Association, Samir Nasuri. Look, I've been following this guy who has had my attention for quite a few years. He and Saleh, those two guys are important figures. There's plenty others, but these two guys that are in the news of late is pretty interesting. So when I say these two gentlemen do a fine job, they do. So we pay attention to it. That's basically where I'm coming from. So in this particular case, Al-Nusiri says the stability of the exchange rate in the parallel market will remain in a state of fluctuation until the completion of the measures currently taken to implement the stages of the financial and banking reform specified in what he says is the Axis 12 and Articles 1 through 7, and the daily efforts made by the Monetary Authority to complete the regulation of foreign trade financing and strengthening the reform the public and private banking sector, which focus on compliance with international standards and agreements and ongoing negotiations with the U.S. Treasury and global banks, and the completion of the selection in the International Auditing Company to audit foreign transfers for banks to enhance their balances in foreign currencies. That deal in currencies other than the U.S. dollar and the completion of final agreements with the Chinese correspondent bank to start dealing in the Chinese yuan after the so-called temporary suspension of foreign transfers with China, as well as helping private banks find correspondent banks to deal with them after central bank's decision to cancel the electronic platform inevitably during this year. That whole paragraph, it's huge, but there's, I think, quite a bit of stuff that you might be able to want to talk about. Is that they're taking current measures, okay? Well, firstly, the parallel market's an illegal market, and we all know that's going to go away. And I think that they're basically kind of saying that is what is happening is that it's in a state of fluctuation. It's going to keep staying that way until they do something different. And ultimately, when they say the Monetary Authority is going to complete the regulation of foreign trade financing and strengthen and reform the public and private banking sector. Well, Ernst & Young is in town, and what are they doing? They're working to merge banks. And they're not only there to merge banks as a auditing firm or accounting firm, whatever status you want to give them, but I think a little bit of both or all of the above will work, that they're going to say they're going to strengthen and reform the public and private banking sector. Well, if you merge the Rafidain Bank and you merge the Rashid Bank into one, you're going to bring some strength. And they're the two focused banks first, because we have data that supports that. Back in January, Ernst & Young did a contract with Iraq, and there was subsequently time frames or actually components of time, in a sense of that we're going to do one contract portion first, second, da-da-da. And it's all about the merging of banks and financial institutions. So keep that in mind. But when they say foreign trade, financing, and strengthen reform the public and private banking sector, that are doing exactly that. They're going to reform the banking sector, which is going to be a key component getting into the market economy. And we already know that this hasn't been new. There's been stuff that's been behind the scenes in the progress of the history of trying to get Iraq's state banks to privatized. You will see that it isn't anything new. And Ernst & Young knows that. They've been around a long time, just as KPMG was, right? We all know that there was specific stages since 2003 that, certain entities work in. And I think there's time limits for the certain auditing firms and stuff. I think it's about 5 years. So they can come and go, but ultimately, and or they can be reassessed for additional time. But that's not the point. What the focus is going to be, basically, what are they looking for? The private sector and the banking focuses are going to be on compliance and international standards, basically agreements, and on the ongoing negotiations with the United States Treasury. So the United States Treasury is still involved here, and we're talking about this as today. So that's what they're talking about. In global banks, besides the U.S. Treasury, so other global banks are involved in this. And what are they looking for? They said that they have, there is a completion of the selection of the international auditing company. Well, I think we already know that, but okay, but they're still talking. The way he verbalizes it, could be translation, is that the international auditing company to audit foreign transfers for banks to enhance their balances in foreign currencies. But we pretty much already know that type of situation. To do what? Deal in currencies other than the U.S. dollar. Well, we've seen it. They have correspondent banks in the past. Didn't go back in time just to show you that that's true, but I'm sure we have that in Patreon, and we can probably dig that up if we need to. But what my point is going to be is that we already knew that the UAE, the euro, the Chinese yuan were going to be currencies that were going to be dealing with correspondent banks. Okay, so that is part of this whole thing. And what are they going to do? They say that inevitably they're going to have a cancellation of the electronic platform. And it's inevitable that it's going to happen during this year. So that could be at any time. And they said that, I think, at the beginning of the year, that it could be, sometime this year. So effectively, it's like, are we talking about, is there things that are happening right now in real time when you see Ernst & Young in January saying they have a roadmap expectation for merging banks and financial institutions, and that they'll have a plan by June or within 6 months? Well, it's now, we're pushing August. So they've had plenty of time. And then obviously they come out today, and we're going to talk about what they have to say today. So, the cancellation of electronic platform is inevitable. That's big, huge. And then they go on to say, they go on to talk about what I just did was, he's stating, al-Nusri, information confirms that there will be a breakthrough very soon by completing the above procedures and finding other correspondent banks. So maybe they're going to add some more other banks for what? Dealing with Chinese yuan, the UAE dirham, and the euro. He goes on to say efforts are also continuing now with the U.S. Treasury. Sounds like they're still in town. And the company tasked with auditing foreign transfers of the sanctioned banks in order to lift the restrictions on them that were using the dollar. So those sanctioned banks that they've been talking about, that Al-Lalak was going to Washington just recently, has had on his plate, because there was, I think, 30 up. At first it was 10 or 12, but it turns out I think it was around 32 different banks that were having issues, and those folks were not going to be part of this development road program, or the development road project, development path, all of those things. But the investment side of things is going to be phenomenal. People will need to be involved in that, and especially with those banks within the country are going to want to be involved. They're going to have a need for that. So anyway, goes on to say, Al-Nasuri explains, we also need to be completed to reform the private banking sector. They want to reform that private banking sector. So first off, if you look at what they did with the contract, it was the state banks. It was the state banks, the two biggest banks. That's the key focus to me, because that's the first to get done. Once the first gets done, I think that's where subsequently, as their contract works, is that they will be in Iraq helping all the rest of the banks as time goes on. Restore work. Yes, electronic platforms is going to be canceled. So once these banks start to get hooked up, in the weaker ones merging with other banks, etc., they're going to have an urgent need to restore their work, get them up and running when the electronic platform is canceled. So that's the second time they're talking about it. And they're stressing that the important measure that the government is responsible for is to stop illegal imports and cancel unofficial border crossings. Is, again, in this whole page when I say that it's a report. He says, we must not forget clearly and precisely that there is an organized lobby working against achieving monetary stability, led and implemented by multiple parties linked to speculators and corrupt people who have an agenda to weaken the national economy and harm it by fabricating news, statements, and short-sighted economic analysis, and transforming them from reassuring news for the market and citizens into news that confuses the market and creates panic among citizens. And this is what is actually happening now. I haven't gone over it, but I think I have someone that we have been exposed to that has had that happen to them recently. They have good news and then they get bad news. So it's assuring, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it counters that. So ultimately, there is a step in this whole thing that is that some people just do not want this to happen. I mean, you think about it. If you've been stealing from the country for 20 years, it's kind of hard to wean yourself off theft and corruption. It just really is. And that's what Iraq's been going through. And they're getting better and better and better. As you can see, that people are doing bank accounts, they're going on to the digital transformation. You can see all that progress. But what they're saying in this particular article is that they have a component that the folks that are out there are still throwing out media. I mean, we all know that there's some entities in Iraq that own media, and they throw it out there to, throw people off. And I think we all can probably start off with the letter M, and we can go from there. But anyway, he goes on and says, my expectations are that the exchange rate will return to stability after completing the reform, the regulatory and negotiation procedures, and this does not take a long time. Dissect this and say, my expectations, Al-Nasuri, are that the exchange rate will return to stability, right, after completing the reform, so something is going to happen, regulatory and negotiation procedures. So where is Iraq now with the WTO? There's regulations involved in that. And what else is there? Negotiation procedures are involved in that. And what he's saying, I think, if that's what he's talking about, makes sense because we all know that we've had some very fascinating, we supposedly had a historic meetings the other day with the WTO, with Iraq, right? And they were going to be formal meetings, but we haven't heard complete 100% output from them yet. But he's saying that the regulatory and negotiation procedures, and this does not take a long time, so something's going to happen, in his view, quickly. Okay, so basically, as far as this is concerned, al-Nusra, he tends to tell it like it is as far as I'm concerned. The man's been around for a while. He's respected. Today, this long piece, it's a couple pages, is basically, to me, is a very telling and a good story. The gentleman basically begins with the exchange rate in the parallel market will remain in state of fluctuation until what? The central bank completes the final stage of financial and banking reform. So I think that's probably a really true statement. There are consistent efforts by the monetary authority to complete the regulation of foreign trade financing to strengthen and reform the republic and private banking sectors where the focus is on a compliance and international standards. And I think that fits quite well with what we're seeing. There's also a focus on agreements and ongoing negotiations with the U.S. Treasury and other global banks. Well, all the United States Treasury, other global banks are all involved in what? Part of Iraq's accession to the future world stage. And so the selection of an international auditing firm, they make it sound like they haven't been around very long. But truth is that they probably have been for a couple of years. And I think that when they signed that contract, they would have had to have proved that they've been around for a long time to be able to get that contract, to get them through the final stages. That's how I see it. This is all not anything new. It's not something that we're waiting for years and years upon years to see it come to fruition. We all know that, I've said it 1,000 times, if not 10, maybe 1,000, but Iraq is supposedly be part of the international financial system. They're going to bring something to the table. And I think that's why this courtship effectively has been taking a long time, because to be fair, complex process that needs to interconnect globally, borders, internally, pricings, externally, stock exchanges. Everybody's going to be on the same page at the same time. And what do we have now? We have electronic systems in place. We have them at the borders, and we have them in the banks, we have them in government, and that is a progress that is coming to fruition, to where that at some point in time that interconnectivity is going to be before our eyes. And then we're talking about going into from a public economy with just a meld with the private sector, as what they're hoping for with the merging of these banks. I think once you have the two state banks come completely merged, we could see that being part of the process. So anyway, that's my view on that. I know that part was a long read. I won't get into too terribly much, but fast and furious. We have the advisor of the Prime Minister. It says achievement bonds encourage safe investment for the public funds. There says that Mohammed Saleh, he's of course somebody inclusive in what I just was talking about. It says he has identified importance of achievement with bonds, while explaining the nature of the government bonds. So he's got about 3 or 4 paragraphs. One of the main things I think is that the dormant balances in people's possession that is outside the banking system and outside the mechanisms of the national savings cycle, in other words, outside the banks, which is consistent with encouraging the virtue of safe investment by the public of their cash balances with sovereign debt instruments with high guarantees and returns, and at the same time facilitates the trading of those financial instruments on the stock exchanges. So they're still fast and furious about trying to get the public to bring in money, and they haven't deviated that for, I think, for a couple of years. So, but here again, they're still hot and heavy, trying to get people to encourage them. They're talking about giving them good quality interest rate when it comes to that. So we'll see how this goes. And here it says that the central bank's dollar reserves, as we've said from Soleil a few times, and others, that their reserves are solid, and their GDP rate is very optimistic. They're talking about that. In this particular portion of it says that Soleil says the surplus in the current account of the Iraqi balance of payments, as estimates issued by international financial institutions, indicate the percentage of the surplus in the current account of the Iraq balance of payments to the country's gross domestic product is no less than a positive 6%, which is very optimistic, and it's a very positive percentage. So obviously they're just reiterating, just enforcing what they've been telling you. Iraq's got a massive amount of dollar reserves, foreign reserves. They've increased their gold supply again. I think closer to 150 tons. Wait, 100, yeah, something like that. Yeah. And so anyway, Soleil's view is what there is stability in the foreign reserves, especially with the dollar at the central bank, and their policies are working now and seem to be in good shape. And so what that suggests is that if they're in good shape, they've got some security and they've got some stability. And I think everybody's starting to realize, all of you that realize that security and stability has been a big focus. Security, stability, and development have been a big focus. And I think that it is coming to that stage where we're going to see more results in a far bigger way. This article is interesting. It's called The Vigilant Guardian, Harmonious Supervisory Cooperation to Guarantee Citizens' Deposits in Iraqi Banks. Well, that's what's really powerful, is because you have what we said in previous videos and audios, is that the heart of Iraqi financial system, the harmonious cooperation between the Banking Control Department and the Iraqi Deposit Insurance Corporation, which is the ICDI, is evident as two fundamental pillars in the edifice of financial stability. That's exactly what the world's looking for, as Iraq has security on the ground, not just in the sense of militarily or anything like that. It's about security in their banking system. And they go on to say that they have compliance with relevant banking laws and regulations, particularly with regard to liquidity and solvency requirements. It almost sounds like they're talking about Basel III or 4 requirements, but they don't say that. On the other hand, the Iraqi Deposit Insurance Corporation, the ICDI, plays a pivotal role in protecting and ensuring the safety of the public deposits. We just saw in our last video or so that they have a huge increase in deposits in the banks because they have that security and that stability. And one of the things that they have is this deposit insurance, which is phenomenal. Okay, it instills confidence in depositors, encourages them to save and invest in banks instead of hoarding, which contributes to increasing the liquidity available to the national economy. It basically, when I say increasing liquidity available to the national economy, that means for investment too. So when the private sector gets going, those savings will be able to help fund all the projects that they need to do. And like they say, it'll drive growth and development. And this demonstration of role will not conflict with anything, but rather it'll be complementary and harmonious, which is to protect deposits, ensure successful and safe use by banking. So look, we all know that the country witnessed a significant improvement, as we can see over the years, in the stability in the financial system. They're working to that end, because we see that their citizens are moving that cash into bonds and doing that stuff, and the increase that you see in the volume of the bank deposits. I think there's a report out up on that. And lastly, in this part of the equation is the integration contributes to achieving the common goals of protecting depositors' funds, enhancing the financial stability, and driving sustainable economic development for Iraq. So I just fully believe that what we've been seeing is just another piece of the puzzle unfolding. These two entities that are in cooperation with one another. They're really basically stating that we're bringing what? We're bringing guarantees for the citizens. We're giving you a safe place to bring your money, bring all that hoarded money into the banks. And look, the bank accounts volumes increased, and you can see that the protections for bank accounts is having a promising effect, and therefore we should see that stability is going to be a reflection on Iraq feeling comfortable to do what? If they have stability in their interest rates, they have stability in their GDP, they have stability with insurance, they have stability in sovereign guarantees for investors. You have all of that in place, the insurance deposits, everything. All of that is going to be a big portion of why Iraq will hopefully go into that international market. So anyway, this last piece I have here is came out in the afternoon. Finance discusses regulating the work of the government banks with international auditing firm of who? Ernst & Young. And who's talking about it? Minister of Finance Taif Sami discussed with the international auditing and oversight company, Ernst & Young, the work plan, the necessary steps to merge, organize a number of institutions in the Iraqi Ministry of Finance. So it's not just the two state banks, but they're going to keep doing it. And because, as she goes on to say, organize a number of institutions. So we're talking about banks and financial institutions, which I brought up earlier. So she goes on to say that the Ministry of Finance, during the meeting chaired by herself, right, ministry headquarters with representatives of the company, a draft was presented by the auditing company on organizing and restructuring Rafidain and Rashid banks, in addition to discussing the proposed plan and implementation stages, right? Get it done stages, determining the frameworks of the contract and formulating it in line with the priorities of reform and development. So in the priorities, which was the first priority? Rafidain and Rashid banks. Then subsequently they gave us in January 2024, okay? They gave us that outline, how they're going to do that. And subsequently, within the last couple of weeks, they gave us another one, slightly different, but to the same degree. So anyway, what they're looking for is they're formulating it in line with priorities of reform and development. So reform the banks and then proceed to what? Develop the country. Minister of Finance stressed the importance of benefiting from the expertise of a solid international company such as Ernst & Young in the field of organizing and restructuring financial institutions. Look, everybody, just know this. Ernst & Young has been around a long time. They know what they're doing. They're quality, high quality, and they know how to zip the mouth. So they're not going to give you front up information. You got to be able to sit back and read between the lines effectively, if you will, because it's not their job to leak out information and be unprofessional. They would not ever do that. They just wouldn't. That's not how international business works. When they say shut up, they do. That's pretty much what it comes down to. If you don't have a need to know, you're not gonna. So anyway, take it for what it's worth. The auditing company's expertise will also contribute to improving the efficiency and the effectiveness of financial institutions. So there again, it's not just the two banks, it's about financial institutions. It's expected that the merging and organization of the financial institutions will improve the quality of banking services provided and enhance investor confidence in the Iraqi economy. Now, don't forget what they talked about too, is that they're going to be focusing in on using Iraq Dinar internally. Okay, they're going to be focusing that in trade internally. That's a big step. So here they're bringing confidence to where? To the investors. That's where I'm coming with. To me, there's no doubt this is a good thing. To me, it's one of the end games for reforms is restructuring of the Rafidain and Rashid banks. My feel is that Ernst & Young have had a play and a plan all along for many years. It's likely the implementation time more so than anything else mentioned. I'm just confirmed To me, the sheer fact that they're talking about it now is massive in my book. That they bring up the restructuring now, because we already know it's been around for a while. So the first component of the whole plan for the contracts from January is the Rafidain restructuring. So once they got started, they have a plan. They've been around for a long time. So it's nothing new. It's nothing new to me anyway. But we're going to find out. I think it's going to be exciting. I think what we're seeing is really powerful, and I hope everybody feels the same way I do. I'm pretty pumped. I'm pretty excited to see this thing happen. Obviously, we don't know which day it's going to happen or what time, and that's not our job. But our job is to try to say, hey, look, this is what they're telling us, and I think everybody should be very hopeful, very positive, and thank you guys. Thank you for being with me, Militiaman and crew. We totally appreciate everybody all the time. And look, if you like the content, you know what, hit the subscribe button, like me, and then also, great, if you guys would like to help keep this place running, we're doing the best that we can. We probably provide a lot of information for a lot of people almost 24/7. So it takes a lot of effort. Keep that into consideration. We have PayPal, we have Zelle and Venmo, and even the smallest contribution makes a big difference in taking care of the crew. Okay? Thank you so much and have a great day. Once again, guys, don't forget to hit that like button if you like this content. Subscribe to the channel or join us at the Militiaman and Crew Patreon community for even more exclusive content. You can also donate to this channel by hitting the links in the banner to help keep this page up and running. Your generous support is greatly appreciated, as always. Much appreciated. Thank you so much and have a great day.